Hi, and thank you for listening to this episode of Mediumistic. I'm your host, Kristen Harlow. Today, I sit down again with fourth generation starseed medium Joseph Bram to discuss the existence of evil, the power of feeling, and the overriding source of love that runs us all. It is a beautiful, powerful conversation, and I really hope you enjoy.
Makes
Joseph,
you. Oh, sorry. We'll have to do that again.
no, we don't. No,
Okay,
we don't.
sounds good. Oh, that's right.
um, Thank you. I'm so glad that you sat down with me again because the last time we talked, we left off with a question, right? We left off with a question: what is evil? Which it's the word is kind of not ideal, but I really can't think of any other word that works for the question. So I'm going to continue using that word, and then hopefully it doesn't create too much division in that it has such a moral aspect to it, which kind of turns a lot of people off. But anyway, so just to refresh a little bit, you had asked me the last time we talked about my thoughts on the coming Christ consciousness, right? And basically, what I shared is that I feel that all beings, all sentient beings, are on the path to that ascended master consciousness, meaning living fully in love, compassion, perhaps miraculous abilities, and with absolute purity of intention, right? And I think we're all headed in that direction. And I think that given the mathematical um, uh, likelihood that every possibility and every outcome is likely to happen, it's also likely then that all of us at some point in the future will reach that ascended master consciousness at the same time. And when that happens, it may result in some kind of planetary ascension. And I asked the question about evil because I wonder, in thinking about this possibility, whether throughout our subsequent lifetimes, as we reach that ascended master consciousness, if we are asked to face down an evil, really is the best word, that strain of behavior that seems to run through the history of humanity from the very beginning of time, right? And some people might say that we're chimps and that this is natural behavior for us, but as someone who has had encounters with what I would call an entity of evil, which I'd be glad to share at some point today or another time. I don't know if it's just a natural inborn quality. I don't know if it's the reflection of the pain of the collective unconscious. I wonder if it actually is an entity that needs to be transmuted, and that will actually happen during that ascended master consciousness raising moment that we'll all reach at the same time. So the real question is, who is that adversary, and what do you think? What do you think evil is?
Ooh.
I know.
Ooh.
No right or
So
wrong here.
I think this is probably one of the most loaded questions we could ask each other as human beings.
Right. It's true. It's true.
Because it so intimately involves our truth. One thing I want to do is I want to continue using the terms that you are using, but I also want to add a few that
Hmm.
help me make sense of, as you were mentioning, the mathematic aspect of it. It's always interesting to me the way that we can look at the things that just seem very, um, when I say spiritual, I mean, as I was mentioning in a past conversation we had that I'm a very feeling person.
Mhm.
So I don't tend to go towards science and math as much.
Mhm.
I've trusted feelings as my way of navigating life. And I'm quite content with the way it's led me to having healthier relationships with others, because I think I can turn all of those things into mathematical equations, but for some reason it seems that there's something inherent in this human experience. Sorry, I'm still a little foggy from COVID, but I think that we are here. I don't want to put this on everyone, but I think it's feeling is such an important part of our human experience.
Mhm.
So oftentimes we can turn everything into an equation and just look at everything through math and like solfeggio and all these different ways that people have kind of unlocked certain mysteries about the universe. But feeling to me transcends that. So why I'm bringing this up is because it's important to, this may sound crazy, but it's important to feel bad sometimes. And we we hate to feel bad. As a general statement, like maybe some people like to feel bad, but I think for the most part, the things we do in life are to avoid feeling bad, avoid feeling pain, avoid feeling embarrassment. This whole category of like emotions, but
I would call it all pain too. I would call embarrassment, anger, shame, fear, all of it. I would call it pain.
and with that, I'll ask you this. Could you have grown into the person that you are today without those experiences?
Absolutely not. I think that the existence of pain may even be a part of the reason why we came here. We may be here to transmute that pain. All of the pain that I experience is what opens me up. It's what brings me closer to God, to the Great Spirit. It's what brings me closer to myself. It's what brings me wisdom, obviously. So yes, I definitely could not have. I couldn't be where I am or who I am without the pain that I experienced. Number one, because of who it's made me, but also because it's not going to be avoided. It's there. So if it weren't
Right,
for the
that's
pain,
true.
I wouldn't be here. you know,
And you know
pain's
what? That's
pain.
so true. You can't avoid it either way.
Yeah, it's
So,
there.
so we were speaking about this in our last conversation as far as how we deliver messages. And I want to clarify just because I was saying there were the 4Ds we tend to, I was saying that we don't talk about them, but that's not exactly true. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I just want to add that into, like, say, we're talking about debt, diagnosis, um, divorce, like whatever those four were, they're still there. But what I mean is
And death is the last one, right?
death as well, right?
Right.
So I think again, it's these things will come up in readings, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is because we were laughing about the fact that how could you not bring them up when they're the most inevitable parts of life, right?
And yet you're not allowed to.
Right. So, or just at least not in the most like, not in a very blunt way.
You have to be very
There,
careful, right?
right. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I mentioned that I just got over COVID, right?
Hmm.
I got it really bad. Some people
Mm.
just get it kind of, they get it, it brings them down a little. It took me all the way down. It was a full beatdown.
Mm.
And the reason why I want to bring that up is because, as I was saying with messages, sometimes they are heavier to deliver, but sometimes they don't have to be. They can be bright, positive, and uplifting. Well, I think COVID has been like that for me. I really want to speak about this experience because it's taught me so much. It was awful in certain ways, but it was also, it's what allowed me to really connect with how much love there is around me. Even in our circle, you guys had a healing circle for me. You sent me healing energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
or my sisters and my mother and my dad, like just bringing me fruits and checking on me. Like COVID allowed that. It allowed me to take time out of the momentum of life that was going on before that, where all I saw was like, I want to be productive, I want progress. I would not have been thinking about those things if this did not happen. So I'm saying that there are bright things and dark things about life that are all part of life. And sometimes it really comes down to our own taking a moment to see how beautiful some of the bad things are. And that's just what I want to bring up about COVID. But we're also like, I want to apply this to the whole idea of evil as well. So the words I wanted to introduce were negative polarity and positive polarity.
Mm-hmm.
Why I say that is because something like COVID is, I would say, parasitic in nature. It survives on a host. There are a lot of things in creation that cannot survive without a host. And that could be as broad as human beings existing on the planet, but but we mostly think about that when it comes to like a disease or a virus living in a human being, for example, right? So I think we don't entirely understand the mystery of the creator. We don't understand everything about the creator with our human mind, at least. We try to, but it's more glorious and mysterious than that still. So when we talk about these dual things of evil versus good, or if there is an adversary versus the one who is purely good and the one who is like the source of bad, I'm trying to find more grace for everything that exists and remind myself that the creator is a bigger mystery than I understand. So, for whatever reason evil exists, at this point in my experience, I feel like it is because it's simply the way things are, that some things are negative polarity and some are positive polarity. We ourselves move in and out of negative and positive polarity. Our survival, for example, COVID is very relevant for me right now. So, PCR tests, COVID tests, how many of those are in landfills?
Mm-hmm.
How many masks are in landfills? Were they necessary for us during this time? Like, could we have gotten through this last period of the pandemic without the tools that we needed? Those are all in landfills. Those are like, that's thick plastic, those tests, right? But so what does that say about us? That's my question, right?
Right. Although I become biased when that comes up because I have a very close relative who is sick or was sick with cancer and has um, a a low efficiency immune system. And so wearing masks is very important for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that others don't is very hurtful to that person because it feels like the well-being of others is being ignored. And what can it hurt really? So I have a hard time, even though I understand your point, I'd prefer to turn it into water bottles. But I know
Okay,
that's
great.
not your point. That's not your point though, so I'm not asking you to turn it into water bottles. But I will throw out there that why is anybody drinking from anything but the tap?
Right.
But let's but keep going. So I do understand your point, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh no, no, for sure. But what where I was going with that is more that we needed that, we still need that. Does that make us evil? I don't think so.
I see.
So what I'm trying to say is that certain things that we have to do as human beings fall into the category of negative polarity action, but I wouldn't say that we're evil for doing so. We need to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And we could extend this conversation to eating certain things, our diets. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, even putting a house on land, there was a natural ecosystem here before that we altered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm really trying to say is that we call things evil, but we overlook the need of certain things to survive. They may be different than us. And so what I was saying with like the PCR test, we needed to do that. We didn't really have a choice. That's how we got through this last period of like whatever we went through. So I just want to be a little more, I don't think tolerant is the word, but I want to give a little more, um, I want to humble myself a little bit that I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand everything. So the things that we call evil, you know what, let's take another example. So for example, I live in Toronto. We do a land acknowledgement before we have official government events. So we acknowledge the treaties about the area, like the tribes of this area. But when you take that a bit further, we talk about truth and reconciliation, but we live in a capitalist society. So the thing is that we still occupy the land because the land is the means of production. So our economic arrangement cannot exactly support the truth and reconciliation we want to move into because that's the way we're. This is such a difficult. This is one of probably the most difficult conversations we're going to have, I think.
Just to go back to the negative and positive polarity idea, I love that. And but what I do think also is that perhaps it's another example of a word being abused, like people call I'll say to you, you're a genius for, making the best brownies I've ever
Right,
eaten.
right,
It's like, oh, okay, I get your point, but you're not a genius, right?
right,
And it's the same thing. It's it's the idea of evil being applied to all things, that the evil I'm talking about is the majors. I mean, the behaviors that are just so repugnant, so disgusting that you and I will sit here and say to one another, I would never do that. Now, of course, where the humility comes in is you don't know what you would do in certain circumstances. You
right.
have no idea. But there are certain things I can say I won't do. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? There just are.
Definitely.
And I can know that for certain. And if someone was holding a gun to my head, well, I can't say because that's a circumstance where I've never been in it, so I don't know what I would do. But right now, sitting here with you, I say that yes, I would allow someone to take my life rather than do some of the things that I'm referring to.
Right.
So that evil is what I'm talking about. That the thing that drives behaviors that are electric almost in their need to be expressed. Like have you ever had an encounter with a spiritual being that you would define as shadow, dark, evil?
Oh, when I was a kid, when I was a child, I had a lot of those experiences. And that's actually why I decided to, I call myself more an intuitive than a medium, but like medium as a working term. That's why I decided to pursue mediumship because it was, it's that bump under the carpet. You just sweep it under the carpet and it's there. It's going to be a problem. So I said, I made a decision. I said, you know what? I have to learn how to work with this. And one thing for me, I think talking about those types of individuals,
The
I
types who
think
do these things, you mean?
the types that exist to, I just think it's all connected because I want to use certain terms as well. Loosh, like loosh, um, adrenochrome, right?
What's loosh?
So loosh is, some people would say, is negative entities create fear and they feed off of fear. So that fear energy is a loosh.
Okay.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong, maybe I'm,
How do you
but
spell
that
it?
from my understanding, LOOSH would be
Okay.
closest thing. So it's like I was saying about parasitic beings. There are beings that create fear, create anger, create hostility because they feed off of it. The planet itself, we're really getting into some stuff here. Whew. Okay, so the planet
Mm.
itself is moving up in frequency. It's moving up into a more, again, we use these words in a very simple way, but positive vibration. It's moving into a higher vibration. There are entities on this planet that are going to lose their food source
Mm-hmm.
as we continue to move up because they fed off of us for so long, right? So I'm trying to tippy toe around around
What are
this,
you
but
tippy-toeing around?
around what I really used to get into. I used to go
I see.
head into the
Yeah.
darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I used to want to understand it directly. I want to understand who was doing these things to humanity. I want to know how they were doing it. I wanted to understand what was going on behind the scenes. Then I started doing readings and I realized I had to keep myself in a certain vibration in order to primarily be connected to a certain vibration of spirit. If I am open and I've been paying attention to a lot of low vibrational things, that's what I attract to myself. That's just the way I work.
Mm-hmm.
So I started moving up and away from those types of things because there is no shortage of those types of things to study, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to make a decision almost every day where I want to go with my consciousness. I want to think about alchemy. I want to think about transmuting a lot of things.
Exactly. And that's why I mention the science side of it. Not that it's an actual science would say you're not talking about science here, by the way. Neil deGrasse Tyson would throw my computer through the window. But but not but I wonder if that strain of evil,
Mhm.
that thing, that energy, that entity, that almost like electric like thing is
Mhm.
actually some kind of chemical or molecule that we don't understand, that it is actually our job to transmute. And feeling, I wonder, is the way that it's transmuted. Feeling and then acting out of love rather than acting out of blame and judgment and fear.
Right.
So that's why another reason why I like to bring science into it. Not science, but the metaphysical science into it, because I think it helps to do exactly what you're talking about.
That's powerful. And I appreciate you bringing that up because I didn't think about it that way. So, what I would add to that mix from the what's important to me is the law of attraction. And I think, I don't know when science and the law of attraction will kind of marry each other, but the law of attraction to me is so important because if I believe that something finite is becoming of shorter supply, then that puts me in competition with everyone else. So, for example, when a student leaves school immediately and goes right to university, I ideally think that if you would approach a university at a later age, you would bring more experience to your studies. But it's become a thing where, at least in Toronto, you need to have a degree if you want to compete for a job, right? So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because in the law of attraction, in our natural ability to create and co-create, we start to approach these things in a different way where we don't need to act this way towards each other. I feel like right now humanity is really in a race to the bottom for resources. And this is connected to the idea of evil. Are there beings in this world that do wicked things? Yes, I think so. I think there are beings that, like, for example, why do we call alcohol spirits?
Mm.
Right? So going to a bar, like, you know, I'm not I hold love for everyone, but the idea is that like there are whatever addictions and cravings you have, there are spirits out there that can attach to you.
Hmm.
Disincarnate beings who had those addictions in life, still looking for human beings that have those addictions in life to, to attach to them, right? So, where was I going with the law of attraction? Is that when we start to create in order to fill these inner voids and to stop thinking that we need to be at war with each other for disappearing resources, that's part of how we're going to change the way that we learn to love and appreciate each other, because we start to understand that there is more than enough for everyone. And those beings kind of get starved out in the process
Hmm.
because they no longer have hostile,
Hmm.
angry people to
And
latch onto.
where do you think the hostility and the anger resides? What do you think it's about? Where is it?
So, why I brought up COVID and the positive side of COVID is because I experienced the purification in my body. That amount of pain, the heat from the fever, I really believe that it had an effect on my chakras as far as clearing off certain things I was carrying. When I reconnected with certain things that would trigger my lust, started feeling it in the stomach area, like a physiological response to an energetic situation. Where it attached to in my body immediately kind of let me know that that energy, that lustful energy, was somewhere in my body. And I kind of was able to identify it. But because it was there before, I couldn't tell the difference. So now my body had a new sensitivity to see where that energy sat. So when you ask about where that hostility and anger is, I'm not going to say that I know, but it makes the most sense to me that it would be in the heart, because love is also in the heart.
Hmm.
So,
I think so too. I think it also though is a all of it, which I would put under the umbrella term of pain, is residing in the body because as of now, we're learning. There are more and more teachers who are reminding us and teaching us to feel and breathe and be and remove blame and judgment from the feeling and just be in it, allow it to be processed and then integrate it into your energy field so that you grow and become more whole. And that process, I think, is what's bringing us to the ascension of the planet. And I think that's what's transmuting any of this, you know, evil or negative energy that exists out there. But I think that right now, because we are so um we're we're expected not to feel in most parts
right.
of society. In some in spiritual circles, that's not the case. People who pursue spirit in any form, be it plant medicine or mediumship or whatever it is, tend to be aware of this. No one needs to tell them that feeling is the point. Although some people I think still live in that spiritual bypassing place where it's like, be happy, don't feel, don't just put that away and, you know, feel the love, be in the love, which of course is important, but we can't be in the love without being in the truth, right? And the truth
Mm-hmm.
is what's happening in the moment. And so I feel that that anger and hostility resides inside the cells, inside the DNA, because it hasn't been expressed in its lifetimes of hanging on to that pain and that pain, that umbrella term, pain being shame, sadness, anger, fear, all of it, embarrassment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it's expressed is through attack because it's the only way we know to express it, blame and
Mm-hmm.
attack, rather than being with that feeling of loneliness that is so deep that you feel you'll never swim out from the bottom of it. Actually being in it and accepting that, in fact, this may be the way I am for the rest of my life. And if it is, it is. And that's usually what allows that loneliness to then rise to the surface, join the energy field, and free you.
You know, I my twin sister always says, hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would ask you then, I would say, You know, one time you were saying in one of our previous conversations that part of your path is to learn to sort of forgive
Hmm.
even the least forgivable.
Hmm.
And you're mentioning the least of us. Some people probably don't even understand that forgiveness is possible. Like, not only being forgiven for certain things, but also forgiving others. When we bring forgiveness into that, I think there are certain beings that simply don't understand. It's like now I'm starting to think about forgiveness in a mathematical way. Like the mass of energy that exists in what is unforgiven. Like
Hmm.
if you could see that as energy, how much of that is on the planet? What's the weight of that, right?
Hmm. And forgiveness is, of course, another loaded word. And I think, to me, I think forgiveness is the willingness to accept that the behavior of another is not in their control, and
Mm,
that what they've done, while perhaps heinous or painful to you personally, whatever it may be, it still is not in their control. And that's what's hard for people to accept. And I understand that. I think we're going to get to a point where we do accept it. And when we're at that point, those behaviors won't be happening anymore.
mm,
You know what I mean?
for sure.
But for now, I mean, the things that people do, if they could do better, they would. It's just a fact. And I say that to some people a lot, and they're often like, no, they can do better. They can do better. And it's it's like, well, I don't think so, because if they knew the pain that they had caused and the
Mm,
feelings that that had been elicited by their behavior, because, by the way, I don't think that feeling is put into you. I think feeling is that old pain that we're all carrying, that is poked when somebody behaves a certain way. So actually, we could be grateful to them for allowing us to see the piece of ourselves that needs healing.
mm,
But um if they knew the feelings that were elicited, if they knew the negative energy surrounding them based on their behavior, they wouldn't do it. They can't see it. All anyone, and I mean anyone, I think, in my opinion, all anyone wants is to be loved. It's just that, unfortunately, a lot of people have a skewed version of how to get love. And that, I think, is driven by the pain that we carry. But to know that, for instance, somebody who has hurt me in the past may have elicited these feelings, but also couldn't do anything else. It wasn't a choice. It was
mhm,
the only option that they had in that moment. And it may be heinous, but that's, I think, forgiveness. That's recognizing that everyone's doing their best. And it doesn't take away the action, of course, but it allows me to go within, feel the feelings, and not remain with the story of blame. Even though there may be blame there, I don't need to remain with the story, because I understand that the story isn't the point. That their actions were their actions because they had to be, and now my job is to feel.
mm. That's profound. You know who this really brings to mind? It makes me think about Mother Mary sitting
Mm,
there after everything unfolded.
mm,
How must she have felt?
mm.
Oh, I get chills thinking about like her son nailed to a cross. Even him saying like, "Why have you forsaken me?" But forgiving us and loving us, you know.
Forgiving the very people supposedly who are doing it to him in the moment. It's like you and I were talking the other day about how I had had an exchange with
Yeah, right.
a customer service representative that wasn't pleasant, and it was all driven by me. I acted like a jackass, and it's okay, it's all right. But I learned that day I needed to make a couple of changes, because if I have this belief about my path to ascension, our path to Christ consciousness, how can I think that I would be able to be forgiving, in the situation that, for instance, Yeshua was in or Buddha was in, if I can't even be pleasant on a phone conversation where my blood sugar is low,
Okay, so you identified low blood sugar. People are carrying so much. We are carrying so much. All the microaggressions that we just smile off that we go through a day. And it's like there's this thing I once saw on Facebook. So it's like a man is in the office with his boss. The boss is yelling at the man. Then it's like four squares, and then in each image, it's like I don't remember what the rest was exactly, but the man is yelling at his wife. The wife, the mother, is yelling at the son. The son is yelling at the cat, right? So it's just passing it down, right? And it's interesting the way you can also pay forward positivity and love in the opposite direction, where it's like one person holds a door for the other, that person goes on to, smile at someone else. But what I'm saying is that people are carrying so much, and that's a large part of the reason why people have these outbursts and reactions in the way they treat people. It's because they're carrying so much.
Hmm.
Again, hurt people. And it really takes, you know, I think there are blessed individuals on the planet who have a larger capacity for forgiveness. I'm not going to say they're the only ones, but I think that they come here purposely to create a certain shift by tapping into um tapping into some sort of natural inclination to be more forgiving or more loving, to take on the things like the way that Yeshua took on what he took on. I think there are certain individuals I've seen in my life who were more resilient to the hurt. And again, not to spiritually bypass, but they were able to feel not only the things they've been through, but even what the planet is transmuting through them as like a reverse conduit of sending all of this hurt energy back up to source. And those people, if we call them bodhisattva or arihant or saints, just calling them saints, they are the ones who are kind of like they're a step ahead in Christ consciousness, I would say. When they come to the planet, it's so that they can help us dig into this well of dense energy and hold it, transmute it, and help us to sort of follow their example of saying, hey, you know what? If that person could have forgiven me, then maybe I should try a little harder to forgive, you know?
Hmm.
So I want to kind of acknowledge those individuals who are here amongst us at this moment. If there are individuals who are causing more conflict and instigating more problems, there are also those here who are doing saintly work. I'm a trance channeler. So when I move my consciousness, I am able to bring forward messages with like, I would say the reason I've been explained why is because sometimes certain things can't have a certain amount of distortion. They need to be spoken directly. And was one thing that came through me was that all of this is part of an ascension. All of the fighting, all sides of it are part of an ascension. So part of me, this is the hardest part of this conversation is me wanting to somehow say that evil belongs or evil has its purpose. That's such a difficult thing to say because at the same time, I know that when I see certain things done to vulnerable beings, my blood boils. One thing I want to understand, why do sociopaths and psychopaths and all these things, why do they exist among humanity? Okay, you know what? Give me a second. I'm going to include spirit in this because this is just something beyond me. So give me one moment. This is okay. this is interesting. Um, I know we weren't necessarily aiming to go in this direction, but they're showing me the pyramids and they're showing me energy coming into the top of the pyramid and going down into the planet. This is very interesting. What I'm being brought to is the individuals in question. I feel like I'm holding a baby and I'm being asked, how would I feel towards this baby in my hands? Because part of me has like the judgmental aspect or the anger, the hatred. Would I feel this way towards a baby? Um, I'm not sure where I'm being taken right now, but I'm being brought to the child, the the innocence of the infant in the individuals that, well, it's kind of like, at what point do people deviate onto these paths where they start to do these things to others? Because it's very, the contrast of holding that same individual as a baby. And as I'm sitting here, it's almost like I see, it's not literally happening, but I'm seeing spirit highlight the keys on this keyboard that say Yeshua. And
Mm,
I'm feeling his presence here. I almost want to say its presence here. Because what I'm being like explained is that like this Christ consciousness holds us like babies.
mm,
And so what I'm feeling like is that I want to go there. I want to go to that place where I can also embody this love for others. It's like it's almost inviting me. As I feel this energy closer to me, it's almost saying like, bring your consciousness over there. Take your consciousness to this place where you will experience the love for an innocent infant. So it's almost like I am being challenged to, my mind, my human mind is being challenged right now to these individuals that do these evil things, to look at them in a different way. And this is not to dismiss or excuse, but it's another option. I'm being given another option in all that is, that in my more human sort of myopic arrangement I would not have tapped into. So I'm grateful that I asked, but this is not to, I'm not saying anyone else has to do this. I'm just saying that this is coming to me as another choice we have.
you're saying the forgiveness of the one who perpetrates the acts that we would define as evil or something else.
It's along those lines, but I'm not even being asked to forgive them. I'm just being asked to hold them in love. The interesting thing about the way I feel right now is that I'm not being made to come to a conclusion except to feel love. And what I'm being told is like, the love is also for me. And the forgiveness is also like, this loving energy is also towards me.
Hmm.
I am loving myself because I am not complete in making amends for things that I've done in this life, knowingly and unknowingly. But existing in this love is allowing me to just have love for myself, have love for everyone. And it's such a peaceful break from feeling like I have to be in forward action as like being on a jury or doing something. Remember when we were talking about the space in between?
Hmm.
I am brought back to that space in between where I don't have to do anything except just be love for this
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
And it's such a like a like relief, sigh of relief to not have to do something. Because when we talk about this evil, I feel myself enter this mode where I'm almost like a warrior, where I'm almost like I have to be an activist towards the things that are happening. And that's a very familiar feeling, spending a lot of time in life trying to affect this change to shift the planet into this more honest, fair, righteous place. But in the midst of all that are the things that I've done, that I've said to people that I've not had a chance to apologize for. But somehow that's not the point. Like, it's not the point. My highest my highest form of existing, of serving, of surrendering, is not to be the warrior and the activist. It's just to be the embodiment of love.
Mm.
And maybe, excuse me, maybe that seems like a cop out. Maybe it seems like it's
It's the
sort of,
hardest thing of all. It's actually the hardest thing of all. It's doing nothing. It's like Yeshua says in A Course in Miracles, you need not do anything.
hmm,
Just ask for help and let God do for you. That's the hardest thing, though. Maybe that's you being a warrior, and you know that you're a warrior in that action, and so you're drawn to the warrior archetype. But the truth is, you're a warrior in being in love. That's being a warrior. That's helping that quote unquote evil to transmute and become a part of the whole.
I will hold more love going forward. For, you know what, this there's interesting, because as we're having this conversation, I'm being shown the capacity of love. The capacity expands the more you practice this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing more like open up, because it's like doing nothing, but it's also doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we talk about Christ consciousness. It's like our capacity to hold Christ consciousness and be Christ consciousness is expanding the more we practice that. And it's almost like, in its essence, it is love. It's just like, I want to sit here in this feeling of love. And it's almost like sitting in the power meditation. It's like, I want to expand this light and keep moving it out. And as I do that, it's for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we set out to speak about evil, but it's almost like I'm just being inundated with this love consciousness, because it's almost like it's being, there's like an override.
It's beautiful. I think maybe that's the answer. That's your answer. Yes, there is evil, little ones, but what there is more of is love, and love will win.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much for having this, maybe my favorite conversation of all time, until the next one, but
Yeah,
this was a pretty good one. And until next time. Your just as a reminder, your website is jbramcreations.com, JBRAM creations with a C and an S.com.
that's correct.
And I look forward to next time. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.